Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. Want to welcome everybody here today. I know it's been a kind of a wet and muggy day outside and a Saturday, so thank y'all for coming out and spending at least the morning with us. My name's Tim Cooper. I'm the Executive Director of the ARC of Alabama. We've been charged by the Alabama Department of Mental Health to go to the regions and share information on several topics to kind of educate the parents and their families and community leaders on what they're trying to get the message out. So there's understanding of all of it. But first, I want to thank Ms. Susan Klingel and her staff for opening up the early intervention building here, for having us here. I want to thank Suzanne for coming out and sharing her knowledge, and everybody else is participating. And thanks to Alex and Alabama Care for providing the videos. And we want to welcome all those that are live on Facebook and Zoom and joining in this group. Just a few kind of house call things. If you need to use the facilities, they're right around the corner to my left, your right, that little hallway right there. We have snacks and drinks over here, so feel free anytime to walk over there and help yourself, or you get hungry when you're ready to leave for a snack, just grab some on the way out the door. We'll have a question and answer session toward the end. And as you're thinking of questions that pop up while the speaker is doing the speeches, you can jot it down. But we're going to kind of go back to the old school classroom style. If you have a question at the end, raise your hand. And the reason we're going to do that, because I'm going to bring the microphone to you so the people on Zoom and Facebook can hear your question. But we do ask that you keep the questions pertaining to the subjects that's on the agenda today. If you have other questions, you can see me after, and we'll be glad to listen to those too and help you with those. But during this time, let's keep it to the topics on the agenda. And lastly, I ask that you turn down your phone or put them on vibrate. I know people ask you to turn them off, but if you're like me, you turn it off. All you're thinking about is who's not calling me, what am I missing? What's going on in the world? So just if you would put them on vibrate or turn them down. But with that being said, I'm gonna let our MC for the day, Ms. Kim Spangler, our Family Outreach Coordinator, take over. Kim, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Are you picking me up? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And what we have learned as we have done these is that when we're online, we've got to abide by some online rules and be courteous to our online guests as well. So I'm going to give Alex the floor real quick to explain that, because he does a lot better job explaining it than I do.
Yeah, just be courteous. This video will be online kind of forever, and we want people to watch it in the future. So, we don't want to get flagged for any language or anything like that. So, also, if you have anything that you would like to say, please just let us know, and we'll give you a microphone so the online audience can hear you as well.
All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So welcome everybody out there in virtual land. We're happy to have you join us. We've usually had about twice as many people join us online as we have in person. I think we all got a little bit spoiled during COVID, realizing how easy that was to do. So on that topic with remote supports and so on and so forth, if y'all will take a look at your agenda, we've got a lot to cover today. So Tim gave our opening address, and then Alex just explained everything virtually. And I'm just going to run through the topics so that you kind of know what to expect and what's coming. The first speaker will be Wendy Pittard, and she's going to talk to us about the autism clinics and all of the great work Susan Klingel and her team have done here at ARC of Madison County, but throughout the state as well. And so they've got some really interesting information to share there. And then we've got Suzanne to share with us for remote support through Safe and Home. There's a lot to be said about technology and the advancements in that area. And so after that, we're going to jump right into HCBS, the new standards for the settings rule and how that applies to you or the different providers and compliance issues. And then we've got some information I'm going to share about self-directed services and the community waiver program. The two are kind of going hand in hand. And then we've got person-centered plan updates and how those play into HCBS, and then guardianship reform, and last but not least, supported decision-making, which all of those topics have a central theme, and that central theme is we're learning how important it is to have community involvement, community integration, to live as independently as we can, and to share that information with others as we go. So that's what this is all about. And I can't wait to get started. There's a lot of good stuff coming. I'm going to give the floor to Wendy, and she's going to blow you away with some very interesting autism numbers and info. This is for you. You got it? Am I good?
Is this working? Okay, great. Okay, this is gonna be awkward, but okay. I am gonna be presenting today on our autism clinic that we have here at the Arc of Madison County. And I have some numbers that I'm gonna pass out as well. Do you mind passing this? We'll be talking about these numbers as we go through. I need to stand over here, sorry, so I can mash the buttons to get through. Okay. Well, my name is Wendy Pittard, and I am the Autism Services Coordinator here at the Arc of Madison County, and I appreciate your time today. I'm going to be talking about our autism clinic, and our goal is that we are providing autism diagnostics, services, and support for children ages 2 through 5 years of age. Just a little bit about the prevalence. The prevalence of autism has risen to 1 in every 36, almost 4 times greater than the 2004 rate of 1 in 125. So still to be figured out if that just means we're identifying it more or if it actually is more prevalent, but it is definitely much higher numbers. Children who receive an autism diagnosis by age 4 are 50 times more likely to receive services. And the CDC estimates that 2.21% of adults in the US have autism, and that equates to 5.44 million. 80% of those are men. So, and that the second bullet there is why we decided to really start this clinic, and because we wanted to have early diagnosing. We see the importance of that and how earlier services helps those families. So, on that topic, early is best. Diagnosing children with ASD as early as possible is important to make sure children receive the services and supports they need to reach their full potential. Autism spectrum disorder diagnosis before the age of 2.5 is associated with considerable improvements in social symptoms. And a growing body of evidence supports the value of early diagnosis and treatment with evidence-based interventions, which can significantly improve the quality of life of individuals with ASD, as well as their careers and families. So everything points to earlier diagnosing leads to better situations and circumstances. So we started our diagnostic clinic. So at the Arc of Madison County, we often say that we find a need and we fill it. The Arc of Madison County's Early Childhood Services Program Director, Michelle Creekmore, saw the need for autism testing in our community. The wait time at most locations is 1 year to 2 years, and we knew that we could do better than that. We needed to do better than that. And so also the options for autism testing for families with Medicaid are very limited, especially in North Alabama. Low-income families sometimes have limited transportation, which also makes going to diagnostic clinics that are 1.5 hours to 2 hours away very difficult. Based on the research that we just discussed, it was determined to focus our autism clinic toward our younger population, and we are serving children 2 through 5 years of age at this time. The diagnostic side of our autism clinic officially began in early fall of 2022. And prior to that was almost 1 year of prep work, including understanding the areas of need, gathering materials and personnel, discovering the billing process, and reaching out to our local pediatricians and determining our costs that would be associated. So here is our team. We have Susan Klingel, who is our executive director. We're very thankful for all of her support, and she has been behind us 100% and is always out there. She says, I'll find the funding and you guys make it happen. So she has been fabulous about that. We have Michelle Creekmore, who is our program director. I am the autism services coordinator. We have a psychologist on board. Her name is Dr. Dina Holloway. She is a licensed professional counselor with her PhD in psychology, and she can provide diagnosing for us. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that because our model is a little bit different than others. And then we have Chris Foster, who's our autism diagnostic clinician. We have Dr. Malia Ellis, who is our autism curriculum specialist. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is entailing in a minute. And we have additional family support specialists and others that help to provide our testing. So here's a little bit about our diagnostic process. When a referral is made, we gather a signed referral form from a physician for the autism evaluation and any other evaluations that need to be completed. We then contact the family to determine interest, make sure they're interested, and then we move forward with the autism diagnostic process. If they are interested, we gather signed releases from the family to obtain any records or reports that are needed. And then we also complete a short developmental and medical history interview with the family. One of the great things about our clinic is that the families don't have any paperwork that they need to complete for us. We were finding that was a big hindrance for a lot of our families, especially our lower income families. They're already having a child that is exhibiting some autism-like symptoms, and they were very overwhelmed. And so we determined that we would not have any packet. Families, any information that we need, we just gather from them by phone or in person, and we write that information down. If speech or occupational or developmental evaluations have not been completed, then we schedule those through our pediatric outpatient center here and complete those. We complete the autism diagnostic interview revised, which is also called the ADIR. And that is typically by phone. And we currently have 6 people on staff that can complete this assessment. And then we have the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule, 2nd edition, which more commonly known as ADOS. That is the gold standard for autism testing. And so we complete that here, and we have 4 people currently that can provide that testing. And then we have additional testing that we can use on an as needed basis to assess a child's sensory needs and things like that. We approach every child as a very, very much individual and sort of determine what sort of testing that they may need. The families complete an autism spectrum rating scale, also called ASRS. And that is a parent completed survey where it really is asking them a lot of their questions about that child's behavior. And then we have a comprehensive evaluation report that we complete. It's completed by Chris Foster and Dr. Dina Holloway with the additions from the other members of the team. And our evaluation report includes all the testing results that we completed, the interview and behavior rating scale information, as well as a thorough list of suggestions and recommendations for support. Okay, so I mentioned that our clinic is a little bit different than other clinics. The reason for that is we have partnered up with a lot of our local pediatricians where they can provide the diagnosis after we complete all of the testing. So we found that that was very beneficial to our families, and our families are loving it because they have already a fabulous relationship with their pediatrician. That's someone that they trust. That's probably who they went to first to say that they had some concerns about their child regarding autism. And so what we've done is we can complete all of the testing, and then we can provide all of that testing results in the full comprehensive report back to their pediatrician. And then the pediatrician contacts that family and has that meeting and lets them know the results and gives them a copy of the report. If that isn't an option, for example, if the family has a pediatrician that's not yet on board, or they have a CRNP, a certified registered nurse practitioner, they aren't able to give a diagnosis. And so we do have Dr. Dina Holloway on staff that we could provide that if needed. But what we're finding is it does allow for a quicker turnaround on results too with the pediatricians. We're not having a bottleneck of everyone waiting on a results session here. And it provides that consistent touch point. They're going to have that pediatrician continue to be in their lives, and then they're able to continue to have referrals from them and have conversations about how to move forward after a diagnosis. So far, we have 23 pediatricians on board with this process, and that is within 12 practices. And they range all across all of North Alabama. So we're very excited to be able to have these pediatricians on board, and we're continuing to do outreach with them so that we can continue to build that sort of clinic model. And we are currently serving families from 16 counties across North Alabama. And we don't limit it. If a family calls us from Mobile and they'd like to come up, we'll say, sure, come on up. We will evaluate anyone who wants to come from anywhere. So our goal is to extend our community outreach to additional counties across all of Alabama. Currently, 44% of our referrals are from Madison County. Our second highest referring county is actually Coleman County. Coleman is sort of this, sadly, it's like an in-between. It's like halfway in between, Huntsville and Birmingham. And so they sort of get sort of a low point of services and things like that there. So that is our second highest referring county, which accounts for another 18%. We've also opened up a satellite office in Decatur to assist our families with a shorter drive from Coleman and other Western counties. Okay, so you have some numbers in front of you that you've probably looked at, but just as a synopsis, we've had a total of 429 referrals to date. That's since September, and we have completed the diagnostic process for 110 of those. 56 of those have received their results from their pediatrician, and 54 of them have received their results from Dr. Holloway. We're hoping to see that continue to, they're sort of meeting in the middle, and then we're hoping the Dr. Holloway part will drop off a bit as more pediatricians become on board with giving the diagnosis. And 75 is the number of autism diagnoses that we've given out so far. 63 of these children have Medicaid. And so one thing I think is important to note is that we're not a clinic that's just going to give it out willy-nilly. We are making sure that what we're giving is accurate. And we've even given several provisional diagnoses where we'll say, you know what, this is looking like this, but we need to reevaluate in a year because we know how important that is. And that's a lifelong diagnosis, and we want to make sure we're getting it right. And our current average wait list time is about 14 weeks between referral and when we're beginning the evaluation process. Our goal is to keep it about this, or even a little bit less. So the way we're doing that is by hiring additional staff when needed to try to keep that number as low as possible. And about 80% of our referrals have Medicaid right now. We've talked some about in our office about how, Huntsville and North Alabama is pretty well-to-do. We have a lot of, highly educated families, but we also have, it's sort of the haves and the have-nots. So we have a lot of areas too that are rural, or we have some, poverty areas and that sort of thing, very low income. So actually 80% of our referrals are Medicaid. And part of that is because if you have the means, you can go for a diagnosis in a lot of different areas, but very few places around this area accept Medicaid. And so that's why we're seeing such a high number for Medicaid as well. So we are working on additional autism diagnostic clinics in these different areas of the state. We're very excited about that. As we saw the need in North Alabama and began this clinic, others took notice and wanted to support their communities as well. And so we're now in the process of assisting several other Alabama communities with developing similar clinic models. So that's our diagnostic side. And now we're venturing into the autism services. So Alabama's Department of Mental Health offers free autism services for Medicaid eligible children with autism. The ARC of Madison County has completed the required trainings and has been approved as an autism services provider with the Department of Mental Health. And as our clinic provides diagnosing for 2 through 5 years of age, we felt that providing services for the same age group would make the most sense as well. And these services are ideal because they can help those families feel better prepared to handle their child's needs. And then also those children are better prepared for school when it comes time for school time. As I mentioned earlier, we currently have 63 children that have received an autism diagnosis that have Medicaid. And that's 63 children under the age of 5 that could be receiving DMH autism services right now. And those numbers are just from our own clinic. So for Medicaid eligible children that receive an autism diagnosis in our clinic, we are assisting interested families with the application process for autism services. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I should have had this. Say it one more time so everyone can online
What is therapeutic mentoring?
That's a great question. So these are different services that DMH Autism Services provide. And we are getting into all of those. We're discovering what these are as well. Therapeutic mentoring, I believe, is where we're meeting with those families and really providing some support to them, and helping the children as well, with whatever it is really the families are interested in. So, yeah. Okay, so we are also working in partnership with UAH and the Department of Mental Health to develop a curriculum for providers to use with families of children ages 2 through 5. And this curriculum will ensure that families are receiving research-based, relevant, and resourceful support. So that's what we're kind of working on, is so that then anyone who is providing these services across the state for this age children can make sure that we're all providing the same kind of services and that they're getting quality services from everyone. Okay, so some of our funding. Once the need for our clinic was determined, funding had to be secured to make this clinic a reality. And so we are Medicaid and Blue Cross Blue Shield approved, and we're in the process of being approved by TRICARE. For our families with insurance, they pay the difference from what their insurance doesn't cover. And the most a family will pay out of pocket is $500 for our clinic. The cost is considerably lower than the majority of other autism diagnostic clinics, which can run $2,000 or more out of pocket. For our families with Medicaid, they do not pay anything out of pocket. And what Medicaid doesn't pay, we cover our expenses with grants. So that's, thank goodness for grants. Helps us do the good work that we're able to do. Just some information about how to make a referral. A parent or a physician, anyone can call our main number here, which is 256-696-5700, extension 1, to make a referral to the Autism Diagnostic Clinic. Once we receive that referral, we will request a signed referral from the child's physician. Again, no paperwork is needed from the family. And then once the referral is obtained and the child comes to the top of the wait list, the evaluation process will begin. Okay, and there's my contact information in case you need it. Is there any questions? No, that's great. Thank y'all. Or should I wait and see if there's any questions online? Okay, great. All right. Thank y'all so much for your time.
I cannot wait to see what this looks like 5 years from now.
Thank you.
This is going great. So next we're going to have Suzanne Hoy with Safe. Do you have anything I can help pass out for you in the meantime?
I'm just gonna put my card somewhere in here in the room and people can grab those.
All right, those can go right up here or on the snack table, either
Okay.
way. And for everybody online, all of our resources will be listed at the end of the meeting. So everything that we're passing out, there's also a virtual link that you can go and look up and print out yourself or just take a look that way. So I'm going to give the mic to Miss Hoy, and Safe and Home will dazzle us now. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you all for coming. Like Kim said, it's a lovely Saturday morning.
Is
Push.
that, is it a red button or is it red light there or is it green light?
Just press it on the bottom.
Is that working?
Not that yet.
No?
No.
The green light's on.
Okay, try one more time.
Hello?
Yep. there.
Okay. So at least it is a rainy Saturday morning. So we can't be out doing yard work anyway. So I am with, yes. I am with Safe and Home Remote Supports, and remote supports is fairly new in Alabama still. We've actually been in the state for almost 2 years, but in the world of the population that we work with, that is not a very long time. And everybody is still learning that it is a service that's available. So we wanted to come today and educate you on this new service that you may be interested in helping with one of your loved ones. So what is remote supports? Basically, it is what it says it is. We support individuals remotely. So it's like having staff, but in another state. So we kind of meet people where they are. And everybody seems to think that remote supports is only for individuals who either live independently or have a goal of living independently. And that's absolutely not true. we are supporting, even within Alabama right now, I believe the youngest individual we're supporting is 8 years old, and he's right here in Madison County. So we have that all the way up to, I believe the oldest one in Alabama is also in Madison County. He's 92. So, everybody has different goals for independence, and independence looks differently for everybody, depending on what their goals are. So what we do is we use assistive technology, and we have over 65 different devices that we can use to accomplish the solution that we put in place for this individual. So we meet with the individual and we talk to them and we ask, what are your goals? What are your goals for independence? Maybe it is to live independently someday. Great. Let's work toward that. Maybe we start that while you're still living with natural supports and you can get used to how it works before you actually move out. Some of them are already living on their own. Great. Let's start it now. Some of them are just working on maybe visitor safety. Maybe they have no intention of ever moving out from where they are, but they want to work on visitor safety. And we have a lot who live with their parents, aunts, uncles, siblings, and want to learn to be as independent as they can for when something happens to that loved one, because none of us are going to be here forever and we need to have a plan in place. So some of these, a lot of people we have on service in Alabama currently fall into that range. Mom, dad want them to learn these independent skills now while they're still around to support them in that. So let's get talking about some examples of how we do this. And we'll start with the youngest and then we'll go through just some different ways we're doing this. So our little 8-year-old in Madison County is, he likes to run. He's a runner. And mom was having a really hard time keeping him safe, to the point that he ended up in the middle of 431 in traffic several months before we talked to them. So mom really needed some ways to help her keep him safe. The very first thing we did is we gave our little guy a geocom. And this is one of my favorite devices that we use because it has so many different functionalities to it and we can use it in so many different solutions. So this little guy, you've heard of the I've fallen and I can't get up button. It's a similar thing, but it's on steroids. It's that button on steroids. So we can put up to 7 phone numbers in this. And I believe the I've fallen and I can't get up button only calls emergency services. You don't always want to call emergency services. Sometimes you don't want to call emergency services. So this one, you can tell us what numbers do you want programmed in here? And in what order do you want them programmed in here? And the individual wearing this, all they have to do is press this button until it vibrates, and it's about 3 seconds, and it's going to start calling those phone numbers in that order. So say you're number 1, but you're in the shower and you can't get to it. And maybe you're number 2 and you're at the grocery store and you're digging for your phone in your purse and you don't get to it in time, which happens a lot to me. So it's going to keep rolling. Number 3 finally can answer it. And it's 2-way audio. You can talk through this. It's cellular based. It's got its own phone number. So not only can they call you, you can call them and talk to them through this. They don't have to do anything to answer it. You can just start talking to them like a voice from heaven. So, mama could get a hold of her son and no matter where he was, and most kids at that age are going to listen when they hear mama's voice come from wherever it's coming from. And she can calm him down, hey, this is mom, you need to stop where you are. And so this is wonderful. So and if he doesn't listen, which I don't know if you're all aware, but most kids don't. If he doesn't listen to mom at that point, it also has GPS functionality to it. So you can, first of all, when they press the button, it will send a text message to the first 3 numbers, always. 100% of the time, they know the first 3 numbers know the button has been pressed. Within that text message is a link to Google Maps. You can hit the link, you can see where it is, you can see if it's moving, which direction it's moving, how fast it's going, all the things. But you can also do that You know, if Kim wanted to see where I was, she could just text a code to this phone number and it would text her back that exact same link. So, you know, it's great for those kids that are runners, to help keep them safe. Is anything 100%? No, but we want to use all the tools that we have in our arsenal to do the best we can to keep them safe. In addition to that, we did implement a couple other solutions. We put door open close sensors on every door in the apartment so that if one was opened, mom knew somebody was going out and could look. We put one on the windows too, because same child did have a habit of chucking all his belongings out his second story bedroom window. And she was afraid that he was going to leap behind them. So she gets notifications on her phone every time a door is opened. She also has a Bluetooth speaker that we put in for her that announces front door open, back door open, bedroom number 1, window open. So she can keep an eye on that. And then in addition to all that, we put an outside camera. So because he wants to go out and play, right? And mom can't go out and play with him. She can't sit there constantly. His older sister is usually out with him, but this way she can get the tablet that we have given her and we've downloaded the app and she can watch him outside playing while she's doing dishes or she's making dinner, whatever mom needs to do. So those are just some of the solutions that we put in place for him. And all these are going to be different. We can't come in and say, oh, you have an elopement risk. This is the package for that. It's because not everybody's the same. Everybody needs something different. Every living spaces are different. It's all going to be a different solution. So some of the older adults that are still living maybe at home with mom and dad, a lot of times we put in things to help them. Visitor safety is a big one. You know, everybody, a lot of these individuals are very trusting of people. So somebody rings the door, knocks on the door, they're going to let them in. So, you know, mom can have this on her phone, the app on her phone, where she can also see, you know, we put in the doorbell, the video doorbell, you can talk through it. So, you know, even if that individual is home alone, mom, sister, our remote support staff can log into that and help them decide, is this a safe visitor or is this somebody that we don't know and we shouldn't let them in? So, you know, we do a lot of that thing. We do a lot of home safety. We have one gentleman who lives by himself and he's fine during the day, but at night he gets very, very scared and everything he hears scares him. So he has remote supports all night long. Our staff, our remote support staff sits and watches their monitors all night long to make sure that there are no windows open because, you know, this gentleman is not going to be opening his windows at 3 a.m. And if they are opening at 3 a.m., somebody is trying to get in. We have, he had one night where he heard something outside and he was scared. We have cameras outside his home so we can log in and we can see. He was frozen in fear in his bed. And, you know, we tried to say, well, hey, you can log in and you can see what's outside. He didn't want anything to do with it. Our remote support staff was able to log in and look out, and it was a dog getting in his trash. I mean, so it was enough that he felt better. He felt more secure. We have people, I'm trying to think, medication management. That's a huge barrier to somebody either living independently or being home independently for an extended period of time. We have obviously the medication dispensers, which, you know, you all can load, a nurse can load, and keep in mind, we don't have any physical people. So we do all this remotely. So once this is loaded, it's gonna sound an alarm for whatever time they take their medication, maybe at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. It's gonna sound this alarm. They can go get their medication. If they're anything like me, you go get your medication and something happens over here, squirrel, you lay it down, you walk away and medication is forgotten. We can actually back that up with an outbound phone call to their tablet from our remote support staff to make sure that they've had a chance to take their medication. We can do outbound phone calls, check-in calls, and we encourage it once a day, maybe twice a day. However often they need it, we can call them and say, hey, don't forget today's garbage day. Don't forget to take your garbage out. Have you had a chance to take your medication? We have one gal who likes to pack junk, ketchup for lunch. So, you know, we call her in the morning on her tablet and we walk her through. Do you have everything you need for your job today? What have you packed for lunch? Let's check it out. Let's see, you know, is there something else maybe that would be better? Dressing appropriately. Maybe we call in the morning and our remote support staff can check the weather in Huntsville or wherever this individual is and, you know, make sure that they're dressed appropriately, that they're not overdressed when it's supposed to be 95 or underdressed when it's 30. All those safety things that mom, dad, families take on that role, that is building their independence, building their confidence, and any kid listens to somebody other than mom and dad better. I don't care who the kid is. That's just the way they are. So we've got a gentleman in Walker County. All he's got for all the stuff we use, all he's got is a tablet. That's it. Because all he needed was somebody to talk to. He was calling, if he had your phone number, he was calling not once a day, not twice a day, not 5 times a day, all day long, to the point that people were getting mad and they were blocking his number. And these were his church members. But you know, people work, they don't have time to talk all day. So as soon as they would block numbers and he couldn't get a hold of anybody, he would get upset. And that's when his behaviors would start and he would threaten to commit suicide. And then he would end up in the behavioral health unit. And this was happening every 2 or 3 months. He was in and out of behavioral health. So we thought, you know what? Let's try it. Let's give him a tablet. He has round the clock supports, except for when he's out for community experience and at church, we are supporting him. He calls us all the time and we love it because that's what we're there for. It's working. We have been supporting him since December and he's not had one episode of a behavior. So it is working. He's using it like it's supposed to be. You know, we have all kinds of other things that we can use, and I would love to talk to individuals about your certain situations. We have things that can detect water leaks. We have somebody in Madison County that is using those. They're at the bottom or at the side of every sink and the bottom of every toilet, because this individual likes to flush stuff down the toilet and flooding. So if we can catch it early, you know, it's not going to flood as easily. We have smoke and carbon monoxide detectors that will not only sound the alarm, the audible alarm, but will also send a text message to people outside the home to ensure that individual gets out safely. And they can send it to our remote support staff as well. And we can follow up and make sure that individual is going to get out safely. Yes. Oh,
I'm sorry. I was just asking the question if y'all had something to help them with cooking and with the stove, leaving it on, things of that nature.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for kitchen safety, you know, we do the smoke and carbon monoxide detector, but we also do have, it's a stove shutoff. So if somebody wants to cook independently and family landlord is afraid they're going to forget to turn the stove off, I think we've all done that. I know I've boiled water out eggs many times. If it does not, it's paired with a motion sensor. So if it does not detect motion in front of that stove, and we usually set it for like 5 minutes, but it can be less, it can be more. It will just cut the stove off. It will completely turn it off. So I can't tell you how many individuals I have spoken with who enjoy cooking, but they're not allowed to cook because their family is fearful that they're going to start a fire. So this alleviates that. They can still cook. They can still have that independence. And it does have an override. So, you know, what it does is it senses the temperature. So if you're baking a cake, you have something in the oven for a long time, it does have an override, so it's not going to kick it off on you. But, you know, for general things, if they want to make macaroni and cheese, they want to make ramen noodles, they want to, whatever it is, they can do that. And you can know that the stove will be shut off. Good question. Like I said, we have over 60 devices. If you have someone that you have a question about and you think, I don't know how they would ever support this, we have an entire team. If I can't think of something myself, I have an entire team across the country who, you know, we get together, we work together, and we figure out how we can support these. And once we're in there, it's interchangeable. You know, it's fluid. It doesn't have to be, oh, we decided on this solution. It might need to change. So I know the biggest question I get is how are we funded? And right now we are covered by the CWP, the ID, and the LAH waivers. We're working on the E&D waiver. So if anybody is on any of those waivers, it is covered 100% on your waiver. We do accept, you know, grant money. We have a gentleman here in Huntsville that is private pay. Like Wendy said, we have some money in Madison County. It's not me, but a lot of people have it. And he's, you know, he's just paying out of pocket for all of his services. So, yes.
Is there somewhere where there's a list of the devices that are available for the clients so that we could preview that and kind of go through that and see what would be applicable?
So we don't really have a list, two reasons. Number one, we are a remote supports company, and that is what we focus on, is the service part of it. We use the devices to help support those individuals. But number two, because it's so individualized, we would rather come and sit and talk to you and your loved one. No pressure. If you decide it's not for you, fine. But we want to sit and get to know you. And then we know the devices well enough that we can sometimes, when I get talking to people, I might get somebody say, we're interested in a video doorbell. Okay, great. But when I go talk and I do that, we end up with 5 other things and not a video doorbell. So, most of the time we find that just sitting and meeting with the family is the best. And we can do that via Zoom. We can do it any other way. And you can call and ask questions. We have a lot of videos on our website that show individuals using some of these. That's a great way to get to know what all we have and don't have.
So you mentioned waivers and out of pocket. You guys accept any insurance outside of those?
As of right now, no. As of right now, we were hoping for Medicare. That's none of that is even in the works. So I'm hoping as minds shift and we move ahead and remote supports becomes more norm than residential and other options. We are hoping so, but at this point, no. Any other questions? Can I repeat the waivers? Yes, we're on the CWP, which is the new one, the ID, and the LAH, the living at home. And we're working on the E&D. We're not quite there, but it shouldn't be too much longer. Yes.
Had a comment more than a question. Where were you 35 years ago when my son was 5? You're wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. We do hear that a lot. All right. Kim?
Thank you so much. You're very welcome. Appreciate that. So, yeah, the kind folks at Walmart would have appreciated one of those little
Yes.
from my son, for sure. My son had gotten to the point where when we showed up, they put certain people on alert because they just assumed he was going to go run and hide, and he did. Yes, sir.
Just one question, those waivers, is that something that we have to apply for, or?
Yes.
CHP, and who's that through?
It depends on what county you live in.
Madison.
Madison, then, I'm sorry. I'm Joe Potes. I'm the 310 director here. We do the intake for the statewide waiting list. The first step, the Department of Mental Health has a call center. I didn't think we brought some brochures with us. You will call them first. They're going to ask you some basic information about the individual, date of birth, name, social, whether they're on Medicaid, and what you're calling and trying to get, what kinds of services. Then the referral comes back to the 310 in the county that you're calling from. So then it'll come back to my office if you live here. Emily James is my intake person. She has so many days to get back with you and she'll start the process. There's paperwork that needs to be gathered and some assessments that she has to do. And we gather all that information together and then we submit it to the Department of Mental Health and they will determine whether the individual is eligible for services. And if that's the case, then you go on the statewide waiting list. You can't, there's no answer to that. We are a pilot county for the CWP, which means there's no ID or living at home waiver slots available to anybody in my county right now. So they are trying to, for the CWP, they're actually trying to target first people who've been on the waiting list the longest. So they're actually going down the list. But if you have a critical need, we will update. That's when the assessments that you do is a criticality assessment. We would update that and notify the department that you're in need of something now. And we go from there. The department does the CWP support coordination. So once they determine that they're going to give you a CWP slot, we're out of it and DMH staff contact you directly and they go from there.
The little cards we just passed out is those numbers that you can call for what services you're looking for to get on the for the waiver services, you know, autism, developmental disabilities, mental illness, peer support, substance abuse. Like Joe said, you call those numbers and they'll refer them to those 310s, whatever area you're from. Thank you, Joe.
Probably just answered about half of the questions for me. So I appreciate, okay. I appreciate that. And we're going to keep moving right along because we have a lot more to cover in a short amount of time. First up is HCBS settings. And I've got this little handout that's a very brief description. And I'm going to start with a plain language video of that. And that will help us kind of roll into, thank you so much. That will kind of help us roll into the next topic. So home and community-based settings, why that exists and what it's for, you'll see on your handout is we have learned that isolation and segregation does not work very well. It ends up setting people up for less than what they could be doing and probably should be doing down the road. And so when we realize that maybe a brick and mortar place for people to go is not always the best answer, not always the right answer. Maybe we can find a place to go out into the community to provide those services instead of taking people out of the community to put them into a place to provide those services. They might become more well-adjusted. They might be able to do things on their own that they could not do in that place, that brick and mortar setting. And so the federal government, alongside our state government, has come together and agreed that we're going to start changing the way we provide these services. And those are going to be home and community-based services. So all of the same services still exist. All of the same waivers are still here. We've even added one with the community waiver program, but we're doing it out in the community. We're doing it in a place that is exactly the same place with the same settings that you and I live in. Why wouldn't we? So for my own son, he's 24 now, but if this had not existed for my son, he would probably be in a day program right now as we speak and not operating in the community. He wouldn't be employed. Or it would be very difficult for him to be employed, and he wouldn't be socializing the way he is at this level. And so I'm very grateful for home and community-based settings, and I think that it's a good rule. And I'm eager for us to come into compliance with that. We're well on our way. I'm gonna set up or Alex is gonna set up the video. I'm not gonna set up the video. And that's the plain language video so that you can take that same information and give it to somebody that might have an intellectual disability, give it to somebody who might have a developmental disability, and speak to them in their language about what it is and why it's so important. You got to come up here to do it. Okay,
Is this your computer?
it's not mine.
You guys mind whoever's computer that is if you use it?
I think one of the biggest trends that we're seeing and the way everything is headed, especially with remote supports that speaks volumes for that, is that we're learning to provide the dignity of risk. We're able to see people accomplish a lot more. And that when they are in a setting where that risk is not provided, that dignity is not provided, then it's almost like we're holding them back to the degree where we're so overly concerned for their safety and security. Not that it's not important, it is, that we put them in a position of monitoring and supervising instead of here, you go out here, you show me what you can do. And I think that through this video and this discussion, you'll see why that's so important and how well it's working.
You ready?
Yes.
Something new inside of the AI space around the go. It's a new product that offers.
Hi, I'm here to
Thank
tell you
you.
about a rule called the Home and Community.
Can anybody hear that?
That supports inclusion and inclusion of people with disabilities in the community. People with disabilities deserve the same rights to make informed choices and have access to the broader community and integrated employment just as anyone else. We know that when people are part of their community, they are more likely to make decisions for themselves, have more friends, and have better lives. There is a new rule called the Home and Community-Based Settings HCBS settings rule that helps support these important outcomes. The HCBS final settings rule, or the settings rule, is a federal policy change announced by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, to make sure that people with disabilities have the kind of services they want in their communities. The settings rule requires that the places where people receive Medicaid HCBS services offer full access to the benefits of community life. In case you are wondering, if you are receiving supports to live in the community, they are most likely funded by a federal program called Medicaid HCBS or a waiver. And these clips will help you learn about how this new rule applies to you. One of the reasons that the government came up with the settings rule was because of input from self-advocates who said they wanted more choice, more respect, more access, and more options. Under the settings rule, you get to control where you live and whether you live with someone. You get to control how you earn money and where you work. You get to control what you do during the day and who you spend time with. You can learn more about what the rule guarantees in the clip, What Does the Rule Guarantee? What are home and community-based services? Home and community-based services help people with disabilities live their everyday lives. They can include things like personal care, respite, residential supports, transportation, employment supports, and other things. These services are provided in the community instead of in nursing homes, institutions, or other settings that may isolate people from other members of the general community. One important point of the settings rule is that there is a difference between institutional services and community services. If people are getting money through Medicaid HCBS, they must be getting community services. States get to decide how they run their Medicaid programs. Keep in mind that HCBS services, sometimes called waiver services, might have different names in different states. But the point of the services is to help you live your everyday life. To be on the waiver, people must show that they need support to live in the community. Without the services provided through the waiver, they might have to live in an institution. Although HCBS waiver services have been available since the 1980s, many people with disabilities still do not have the opportunities they would like to be active and included members of their neighborhoods and local communities alongside people without disabilities. They may live in the community, but might not be a part of the community. The settings rule was passed to help to address this. There are some important dates for you to know about. Let's talk about 3 in particular. The settings rule came out in 2014, but it takes time for states to evaluate all of their services and for providers to make changes. States were originally told by the federal government that they had until 2019 to follow the rule. But now the federal government has given states a little more time, and now they have until 2022 to fully comply. As part of the final settings rule, every state was required to submit a statewide transition plan, sometimes called an STP, to CMS. CMS stands for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. They are the federal agency that oversees the HCBS program and helps pay for it. In each state's transition plan, they must describe how they will make sure that the settings where people live, work, spend their day, and receive HCBS services are truly community-based. You can visit www.hcbsadvocacy.org to find out about your state's STP and learn about opportunities to provide input into the plan and the way it is carried out. Throughout the transition process, states should ask you for your input about the HCBS services you receive, the places where your services are provided, and changes that could be made to help you get the community life you want. This is your chance to share what community life means to you. You can learn more about what you can do to make sure your voice is heard in the clip entitled A Call to Action. Even though the settings rule was put in place for states, providers, and agencies to follow, the reason the government made the settings rule was for you, for people receiving services. You can learn more about the settings rule and what it guarantees you as a person receiving Medicaid, HCBS services, and the clip, What Does the Rule Guarantee? You can learn more about the choices you should be making in the clip called Your Life, Your Choice. An additional clip called Rights, Restrictions, and Modifications outlines the assurances that must be in place if any of your rights are restricted or modified. The settings rule also lists additional requirements that must be met in settings that are owned or controlled by a provider, both in residential and in day and work settings. These are covered in 2 clips: HCBS provider requirements for residential settings and HCBS provider requirements for non-residential settings. The settings rule also provides conditions for person-centered planning. You can learn more about person-centered planning in the clip HCBS and person-centered planning. It's important to remember that the settings rule covers all types of HCBS settings. If you live in a group home, for example, or go to a day program and receive HCBS services, the settings rule applies to you. We invite you to watch the following clips to learn more about the HCBS final settings rule and learn how it can help ensure you have access to the community, choice, individual rights, and independence. If your HCBS services don't provide you with these opportunities, the clips will assist you to find ways to speak up and make a change.
See if I can-
This is my comeback. Start your.
Yay, I did it. All right. So the settings, the clips that they were talking about and the settings rule videos that they mentioned to go back and watch more about, they're listed on here. We'll also list them online. If you want to stop by the table and write these down, jot these down, we can do that. Or you can go online after this and watch it all over again and get it that way. So we'll have it available to you in both formats. Going forward, HCBS is here to stay. We had our compliance standards in every every provider in the state fell under the same compliance standards. The important thing to remember for a provider service is that if it's 70%, it's not compliant. We're looking for 100% compliance. All right. And so I think that's great news. And we're happy to say, we've got 80 plus that are 100% compliant. Am I right on those numbers? Check me on my math, but that sounds right to me. So we're doing really well. We've come a long way. We still have a long way to go, but we've come a long way. And I think with the technology advancing, the diagnoses advancing, it sounds like there could be a bill and some legislative work in action that I think will get us to where we've been trying to get to for a long time, which is complete and total integration for individuals into our society and our communities. And how we do that looks different for everybody, but we know that it's possible because we've seen it done and it works really well. Any concrete questions on how this looks for you and your families? Yes, sir. Oh, you do need a mic. I forget. This one? Okay.
So actually I had a couple of questions. First, are y'all finding it where more and more, I guess not businesses, but the community itself is opening up to this idea and being more accepting? I know in the beginning it was hard road to follow, and then I'll let you answer and then I'll follow up with my other question.
Okay. I don't need that, do I? So that's a great question. That for a long time, we probably should not have thought this way, but we believed that we were scared to go out in the community because we would not be accepted in the community, or we might be rejected, or it might not be safe. What we have learned is that not only is that not true, but most of the time, and I'm proud of the South, y'all, because our numbers are really high here. We are welcoming people with differences and disabilities with open arms. For example, my son 10 years ago would not have been welcome in college. He actually was on the AAA standards in high school and was able to go to college. That happened just in time for him. So he got that big individual living experience on a campus with people his age, his same age group peers, typical mentors, and he developed wonderfully, his confidence through the roof. I wasn't there with him. I wasn't living with him in that dorm. I wasn't with him in that apartment. Was I at home in my bed looking at Life 360 and scared every night? Absolutely. But he did it and they welcomed him. And the more that we see that happening, the more we think to ourselves, what were we afraid of? What were we doing? What were we thinking? Not just on college campuses, whether it's a volunteer group, whether it's a church that has a program that does this on Saturdays, whether it's a social group or a club, everywhere. One thing I'll add to that I think has helped a lot is that we've let go of the assumption that because you have a disability in school, you have to be in a self-contained classroom, because we're seeing more and more kids who have been diagnosed with a disability not go into the self-contained classroom and stay in that general ed classroom well past 4th grade. And so their peers are learning how to talk to them and collaborate and socialize in learning. And it's just become part of my younger son. He's 16. It's just part of his education. And there's plenty of kids in his class who have a disability. And that's just part of his world. I don't think I could have said that for my parents. I don't think my parents had that experience. And so the more we understand it's okay, we need to provide that dignity of risk. And the more we get out there, the more open and welcome we see communities becoming. So long question, long answer, but yeah.
Great answer. I'm glad to hear. The other question is it still where if an individual's IQ is 70 or over, that they don't qualify for possibly this or any? I know there's several waivers they don't qualify for in this state, in our state.
So you're talking about the IQ
Yes.
qualifier in and of itself. So it's different. You're right. It's different for different waivers. You're not gonna.
No, I was gonna say, no, it's not different. Not for
Mm.
our waivers. The IQ is the same
The-
for all three, but they are proposing changing that in the waiver amendment
Right.
to 72. So you would have.
Can you say that on the microphone? so
I'm
that-
sorry, I talk so loud, I never need a microphone. I just said that currently all three of the waivers use the less than 70 IQ, but they're proposing in the current waiver amendments that are going to do a lot of different things. One of them is changing the IQ to 72. But it hasn't been sent to the federal government for approval yet. So.
But we're also not going to be looking as heavily at IQ as a qualifier for the waiver, like the CWP. And I'll go into that in a minute. Did that answer your question? Keep in mind, and I'll just tell you this from this is where I get to put on my parent hat, and I love this part of my job. But my son actually had 3 different, very different IQ scores. Some were low and some were high. And so the more we learn about those IQ assessments, the more we realize as children grow and develop, they might not be as accurate as we had hoped that they were. And so we're letting go of the presumption that that's the end all and be all that gets you qualified for a service. There's other ways than just IQ. All right. So are we wrapping up with HCBS? Are we good on that? Any more questions? Okay. I feel like we've covered it all. There's plenty more to learn. But we've got the links right here for you. All right, moving on to self-directed. I can see self-directed services as such a good thing, and I hope that we continue to embrace it as much as possible. 3 reasons why. The home and community-based settings just naturally speak to it. They're going to work out really well if you can do a self-directed service in any of these waivers through home and community-based settings rule, because trust me, you're going to be in compliance if you're directing your own services. It's just going to work out well that way. The other thing about self-directed services is that you are putting your child or your loved one in the position of making more choices for themselves. And that's how we learn and grow. So I see that as a really good thing in and of itself. Self-directed services doesn't mean that there's a service off the table. It just means that you're the person who's in control or the one who is choosing and deciding how you want your day to look, what your day looks like. Your person-centered plan, that's all you. What you do during the day, that's all you. Who you hire, that's all you. And that can be a really good thing. Self-direct, do we have a question online? No? Okay, self-directed services are not limited to any specific waivers, but at the same time, when you do self-directed services with the community waiver program, you're going to have a world of opportunities opened up to you. The self-directed services are my favorite way to use waiver services, but that doesn't mean that it's necessary. If you don't want to use self-directed services, or if you've got to depend on another avenue, that's fine. But I highly encourage you to look into it because I think it can be a really good thing. Does anybody here use self-directed services? A few of you? Okay. How have you enjoyed it so far?
It's been a very good experience,
Good.
very good. They go out into the community. She volunteers. Like you said, they're in the community. They are showing inclusion. It really provides a education to the community
Mm-hmm.
as to what our kids are capable of,
Mhm.
and shows their uniqueness. And it's just very, it's been very rewarding to her.
I was supposed to have the mic in front of you. I'm sorry. I'm not used to this. I'll get used to it. Very positive outcomes with self-directed services. And we're seeing a lot of that all around. Self-directed services are not really new, but they're being used a lot more. What we're seeing with what they've called the silver tsunami as people are aging and staying around a lot longer and using services through long-term care centers a lot more, is that these self-directed services are going to position our loved ones to be in a place where they can choose and decide whether or not they want to go into those more, what I'll call institutional settings down the road, but they don't have to. And they've already learned through using the self-directed services that there's a natural support system out there just waiting to be utilized. So that's kind of how I look at it. And I think most people using self-directed services would say the same. Really good thing. So the community waiver program, I've got this to hand out to everybody. And I'll start it here. Can you pass it down? Take one and pass it down. And this is double-sided, but the community waiver program in Alabama, it is a new waiver, and we're really excited to have it. There are 5 different ways to use the waiver and several counties. You'll see at the very, very bottom in the blue on the sheet that I'm passing around. The counties that have adopted the community waiver program are Baldwin, Elmore, Houston, Jefferson, Limestone, Madison, Mobile, Montgomery, Morgan, Tuscaloosa, and Walker counties. Those are just the initial counties that we're using the community waiver program with. We will soon expand and get more down the road. We've got slots to fill all over the state, but we're starting with those counties. So the program itself, the five areas that the community waiver program serves. The first one is for children with ID, ages 3 to 13, who live with family or other natural supports. That's the first way to utilize the community waiver program, the first group. The second one is the transition aged youth with ID, ages 14 through 21, who live with family or other natural supports, or their ages 18 to 21 who live independently. So that's the second group. And the third one is working age or older adults with ID who are aged 22 and up. They live with family or other natural supports who can live independently. And then second to last is the individuals who have ID ages 3 and up, but they are unable to live with family or other natural supports, or they could live eventually independently. And then the last is the group of people who are individuals with ID who are ages 22 and up, and they have a minimum of 1 substantial functional limitation. And so that could be somebody very high functioning, but they need some help with their checking account. They need some help with their budgeting skills. That could be somebody very high functioning that does their budgeting just fine, but seems to not be able to pass that driver's license test. And so they need some help with transportation. 1 substantial functional limitation is all that is needed to qualify for that one. So I think that that's pretty much got it covered. We've been working long and hard on this as we roll it out, and we see a lot of people on the community waiver program who are using not only self-directed services, but remote supports going forward. And so they're starting out at an earlier age with all of these independent living skills, so that by the time they are in their 20s or 30s, they're much further along than they would have been without that kind of assistance, that kind of service. So questions on the community waiver program? Yes, ma'am. I remember to bring you the mic.
You don't need that mic, you already went up.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. I'm not used to these mics, Alex. Go ahead.
I don't really have a question per se, as more of a comment. If you would let everyone in the room know currently how many are waivers there are available with the CWP program, and when you anticipate it expanding.
How many are available?
Currently.
Available, I think we've got a little bit over 200, but that doesn't mean that they're just going to pop right up. We've got a waiting list to work from. So,
For example, another comment, and I shared it with this woman next to me. My son is now 35 years old and he has been on the waiting list since he was 18. I don't want to discourage anyone, but he's been on the waiver program waiting list. He's just now started to get the community waiver supports because he's been on that waiting list for a long time.
I was just going to give some other numbers. The pilot, the first 2 years is supposed to be 500 slots. I think they're filled roughly, I think about 300 was the last number we were given, and they're supposed to get the other 200 by the end of September. Now, right now, those slots are only available in the pilot areas. We had Byron White come and speak to our waiting list families a couple of months. And he told those families that if you feel like you need the service now, then reach back out to Emily, my intake person, and she will send them an email and let them know you are ready and they should reach out to you, because those slots are only available in those counties at this point. They've not indicated when they're actually going to open it up, but they have already requested more slots to start filling next year, which our fiscal year is October 1. So, we're not far from there. That's their plan at this time.
Thank you.
So they still got a lot of people they can serve.
For sure. Any more questions on CWP? Community Waiver Program. Thank you, Joe. Okay. Moving right along, we are going to cover person-centered plans. And what I found out is another old school way of referring to person-centered plans. You might hear somebody say ISP, an individualized support plan, person-centered plan. All right, same thing. So what I'm going to do is pass these around. These are complements of ADAP. These are huge and they're two-sided. But what this does is it takes the home and community-based settings, all those compliance, those settings rules, and it looks at each individualized waiver. And so I've had families and parents come to me and say, what does this home and community-based settings rule, how does it affect my person-centered plan? How does it affect my child's person-centered plan? And my answer to that is really plain and really simple. If it's not in their person-centered plan, then it's possible that there's a modification or a restriction that prevents home and community-based settings from working, but you would and could and should know about that. All right, does that make sense? That's the best way I know how to say that. So there are ways, everybody's different. We all have individual needs, but there are ways to modify or place restrictions within a person-centered plan that could or would affect the home and community-based settings rule, but not without you knowing about it. You could and would and should, prior to signing that person-centered plan, know about whatever modifications or restrictions are in that plan. All right. So if you got to go down the list and you look at these different waivers, you'll see how each of those waivers are affected within the umbrella of HCBS. And that should help you, whatever waiver it is, write yourself up a really good person-centered plan. And that's the best tool I have for you on that, because it came from ADAP. So that's a really good resource right there. Yeah. All right. So one of the things as a parent, I'm going to put my parent hat back on, is talk to you about modifications and restrictions. What would a modification or restriction look like? A modification or restriction might look like this person, like with what Suzanne was talking about, this person is terrified of the noises they hear at night. And so there are some sensors on windows and doors to help this person feel better. Well, if that person did not have that fear, and there was no reason for there to be a sensor on their door or their window, but there was a sensor on the door or the window, then that would be considered a restriction, and that would fall out of compliance. Does that make sense to everybody? So if there's a restriction or a modification on the person-centered plan, then it's something you would have known about, could have known about, or should have known about prior to that person-centered plan being set into place. Otherwise, it should all fall and fit well within the home and community-based settings rule. That sums it up. Clear, plain, and simple, right? Everybody's still reading that very long list. Take it home. That one's going to take a while. All right. Last but not least, we're finally getting to the good stuff. Guardianship reform. I'm so proud of this one. Guardianship reform, I think, is huge. A lot of people for a very long time, and in our state, in Alabama, the way that you got way back in the day, the way that you got into an institution was by being able to prove that you were this person's guardian. And so you almost were at the point where you could not receive services unless or until you had a guardian. Well, we've come a long way. Now that's no longer a requirement. But a lot of the mindset that somebody with an intellectual disability or developmental disability needs a guardian, a lot of people still believe that that's true. Sometimes it is. The way I like to think about it is that if there is a need, if there's somebody who cannot communicate. Now, I did not say they're nonverbal. There's a big difference between somebody who is nonverbal versus somebody who's uncommunicative. All right, because now with technology and so many other things, we've got ways to help people communicate if they are nonverbal. And I don't even like using that word, but if they cannot communicate, they truly cannot communicate, then yes, I would probably consider a guardianship. But now we've realized as we provide more and more of that dignity of risk, we understand guardianship is not always necessary. And as we've come along, and I think we've understood that there's a lot of restrictions and a lot of rights lost when you place somebody under guardianship. And a lot of times parents or caregivers don't even know, they're not even told what those rights or what those restrictions are. But basically, you're taking that person and telling them somebody else is going to make all your decisions from here on out legally in the eyes of the law. That's what that means. Well, for somebody like my son, that's not really fair because he can think for himself. He can speak for himself. It just might take him a little while to get there, or he might need some help along the way. And so that's what supported decision making was all about. And that's when we passed the Colby Act, named after my son. And I'm so proud of that because it really changed and carved a path, changed the way we think about how we listen to people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. We shouldn't really always be speaking for them. We shouldn't really always be telling them where they're going to go or what they're going to do. We should be asking them what they want to do, where they want to go, and please, Colby, tell us your ideas on this subject. And if you need to know more about this subject, tell me about what you need to know. For example, I have a hairdresser. I don't go to my hairdresser. I know I don't look like it today, but it rained, so that's my excuse. I don't go and sit down in front of my hairdresser and say, okay, hack it off, take it away. You do whatever you think is good. We have a conversation before she picks up those scissors, and I tell her what I'm thinking, and she tells me if I'm thinking in a good way or not. She recommends her ideas, and we go back and forth for about 5 minutes before she even puts her hands on my head. That's a great example of supported decision-making. Another example is some of you might have a financial advisor. Some of you might have a counselor or a therapist. Some of you might have a pastor or a best friend that you go to. I would never walk onto a car lot and buy a car without my husband with me. I don't know anything about cars, and I really don't like dealing with car salesmen. So I make sure he's there if that's something we have to do, because he knows all about cars. He's a salesman himself, and he knows how that goes, and I can listen to him and learn. These are all really good examples of supported decision-making. We all do it. We all do it every day. We all do it in big ways and small ways. When you go online to buy something from Google and you check those customer reviews, before you buy something to see what everybody else said about it, if it's a good product or not, you're using supported decision-making. That's what we need to be doing and offering for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, because they need to be able to make their own decisions, and they can if we give them the chance, if we give them the right opportunity. So all of that to say, there's a big movement going on that's national and international, and it's happening here within our own courts through the Wings Initiative. And we're basically trying to reform guardianship, and we're looking for ways to restore the rights that have been lost for people who have had to have someone become their guardian. And one of those ways is supported decision-making. With my own son, I'm going to pass this around for y'all. The Colby Act and supported decision-making right here, front and back. But the bottom line is he has a team. Thank you. He has I'm still holding this microphone, Alex. He has a team of people who come around him and support him in different ways. He has a healthy living supported decision maker. He has a financial safety and security, social, spiritual, community living, and employment. Colby, and his own same age peer mentor. So my son Colby has a very large team. And the reason we did it that way was because I learned all about the life course tools when I was growing up in this business from our DD network and our DD council, and went to a bunch of those subcommittee meetings and learned all about the life course tools. And that's another resource listed here. But the life course tools identifies different domains that we all function in throughout our life, or even from toddler age to senior, elderly. And it names those roles. And each of those roles are laid out on a piece of paper in a beautifully colored icon system that you can learn quickly and easily. So Colby knows the circle that has the picture of the white building with the pillars on it means safety and security. He knows the blue circle that has a picture of the stethoscope with the heart means healthy living. And so those domains and those life course tools were all areas we knew Colby might need some support with growing up and making decisions for himself. So we just found people who were experts in those areas. I happen to have a friend who is a nurse at UAB, and now she's gone and got her doctorate's degree, and she's going to lead all the nurses, but she's worked in the emergency department since she started. And for Colby, that was important because Colby had sleep seizures. And so as we grew, I got to know Heidi, and we had conversations, and Heidi knew from her experience in the ER all about children with seizures. And so Colby is now serving on Heidi is now serving on Colby's team as his healthy living support. And he will call her, and he did when he was in college. Hey, Heidi, my doctor said I have to take vitamins because pizza and Coke is not a good idea every night. And he wants me to do this, but there's 50 different choices on this shelf in Publix where I work, and I don't know which one I'm supposed to pick. Can you help me? So he gets Heidi on FaceTime. She looks, she helps him decide, because we've signed that HIPAA release. She knows all about Colby and his medical records. So it's a wonderful thing, and it works beautifully. Highly recommended if you can do it. But even if you have already gone the guardianship route, it's not impossible to undo. You can undo it. But if you don't want to undo it and you've got really good, solid reasons to keep it, great. Supplement it some and do it on your own, and use supported decision-making and have those face-to-face conversations as often and as frequently as you can. Super important for developing independent living skills. Guardianship reform has gone from a state, I think we have 17 states now that have adopted supported decision-making. Alabama's not the last. We're on the front end of that. And I think there's going to, by this time, 2 to 3 years from now, there should be close to 32, because there's that many working on it diligently. There's also a federal law in place to restore a Bill of Rights for people who are under guardianship. So we're really encouraged about that.
I think we should applaud Ken and Paul.
Oh. I think, thank you. I think that's it. If there are any more questions, we will wrap it up. If you have any questions for us, we've got lots more information up here. You're welcome to take as much as you want home with you. Feel free. I've got my business card over there, along with our executive director, Tim. Feel free to grab a card and call me if you want to have one of those one-on-one conversations. That's fine too. But Susan, thank you so much for giving us this space. This was absolutely the perfect space in the right place. And you were very, very kind letting us do it on a Saturday. We were told we needed to pick a day of the week that would be on a weekend that was not when people were working, and you were it, and you obliged. So thank you so much. All right. We are going to wrap it up.
Any more questions or comments? Thank y'all very much for coming. I hope the information you received today was helpful. As Kim said, there's a resource page up here. If you go home and you think of some questions, please reach out to us or Joe at the 310s, and we'll be glad to go back over it. Plus, the video shot today should be uploaded next week on Alabama Care and the Arc of Alabama's websites. So you can go, and if you said, what did she say about, and you can go back and review it. And also the previous two in Birmingham and Mobile is on there as well. So if you want to listen to those with some other, different speakers, you can do that as well. But two things I want to leave you with. One, as you leave, please grab a snack for the road. And while you're on the road, please be safe going back and safe travels. Thank y'all for coming and participating.